I'm Darrell Keel, and I'm a Lutheran pastor here in town. And I am here to help present these petitions from Credo and Faith America, well over 100,000 signatures. You'll have a copy of all of these, of course. The petition is in reference to the consideration of David Barton's work being on APT and our objections to that. As a Christian and a pastor and a father and a grandfather, I've always trusted public television to be a source of appropriate entertainment and also reliable information about history and culture. I'm disappointed that APT is even considering broadcasting David Barton's History of America, what I believe is a biased and misdirecting history. Since our nation's founding, many Christians have fought for justice, equality, and the common good, and Mr. Barton's work appears to diminish some of those contributions, even including downplaying the role of Martin Luther King Jr. So in my opinion, revisionist history, including his, is unworthy of public television. So we appreciate you receiving these petitions. And
here. Okay, we'll do it.
It's the front page in of it, and this beginning of the list of the signatures, which are on here.
Thank you.
And Mark?
My name is Mark Potok. It's P-O-T-O-K. I'm a senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm also the editor-in-chief of our investigative magazine, The Intelligence Report. We study David Barton among many other people. We study the radical right-wing extremism in this country. And in fact, what I want to say is that David Barton is not in any remote sense a historian. David Barton is simply a propagandist, and a propagandist who lies with regularity. This happens again and again and again. I want to point out that as it happens, this is completely unrelated to this news conference, but as it happens, we just published an issue of my magazine looking at the 30 arguably most influential extremists on the right in this country at the moment, and David Barton is one of them. So we have just featured David Barton. I want to say that David Barton, as the pastor said, has absolutely no place on Alabama public television, which in the past has been a rare source in the state of genuine educational materials, of high-quality news, and really fine programming. I mean, this would be, has been said by the COO of APT, something that ultimately could destroy public television programming in the state of Alabama, which direly needs it. I want to go into just a little bit of detail. Why do I say that David Barton is an extremist of the radical right? He is a man who believes that gay people should be sent to prison for the crime of being gay. He is a man who claims that the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated American government at all levels. I'm sure that everyone here remembers another person has made that claim quite prominently in recent days and has been shot down by, among others, former presidential candidate John McCain and the House Speaker John Boehner. I think that says enough about that. David Barton also, as a matter of fact, promotes the work of Robert Spencer, a man who was written about and much admired by Anders Breivik, the mass murderer in Norway who killed 77 people because he thought they were enabling Muslim immigration into that country. David Barton claims on nothing at all. David Barton claims on the basis of nothing at all other than his tendentious reading of the Bible that environmentalism, deficit spending, graduated income taxes, the minimum wage, and all measures to fight global warming, among other things, are opposed by God himself. This is a man who says that Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King deserve no place in high school textbooks in this country. In the case of Martin Luther King, because in the view of David Barton, it was not at all minorities who made possible the Civil Rights Revolution or the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was the majority. Presumably that means white Americans in Congress who voted ultimately for those acts. Perhaps most importantly of all, in this context, Barton argues that the United States was founded as a quote-unquote Christian nation, an idea that is simply false by any fair reading of the evidence. In fact, he's put his new book, The Jefferson Lies, makes this claim. America was born as a Christian nation, that in fact Thomas Jefferson, the man who first came up with the phrase, the separation of church and state, the wall that separates church and state, really meant that the country in fact was founded as a Christian nation. This is so absurd that the History Channel just this month evaluated a whole series of books looking for the worst history book in America, and in fact David Barton's book, Jefferson Lies, won that dubious honor. Why is that? Well, David Barton is not a historian in any sense. He doesn't even have an undergraduate degree in history. He is a man who got his education from Oral Roberts University in religion. That is what he studied. He had no studies based on history. I will just say that real historians out there, many of whom have reviewed his book, including a good many who teach at Christian colleges of one denomination or another, places like Baylor College in Waco, Texas, have said things like, Barton's writings are, and I quote, filled with distortions, half-truths, twisted histories, glaring gaps. They've said that what Barton writes is not history at all, but hyper-politicized propaganda. He's been called an ideological entrepreneur who's created an entire alternate universe, a man with a kindergarten, quote-unquote, understanding of history. In history circles, one historian concluded this is what we call bad history. And yet, this is what certain people in the directorship of Alabama Public Television want to broadcast. Indeed, that is what the leadership of Alabama Public Television was fired over, along with the really lousy rewriting of the mission statement in order to include, or rather to exclude, people whose sexual orientation is other than heterosexual, which apparently is all that David Barton and his friends approve of. I just want to say that, Alabama is a serious, it's an important institution in a state that doesn't have many. I think it is perfectly clear that bringing in this kind of programming, which has nothing to do with any kind of education, is merely right-wing propaganda, would be disastrous. And I certainly am one of those who hope that it does not happen. Thank you.